Okay, welcome to the Briar Patch. So there's so many things that I want to accomplish with this blog, and I hope the order that I'm putting these videos in is making some sense. But today I want to point out to you guys why I called my blog Secrets of the Briar Patch. So when I was growing up, my grandma, I remember I have fond memories of her reading the book Uncle Remus's Briar Bear and Briar Fox. And in this book, Briar Bear and Briar Fox, one of them always ends up in the Briar Patch. Now the Briar Patch is just this tangled gully, down in a gully, and the tangled vines with thorns all over it. So that would be a briar patch. So when I visualize depression, I think of a briar patch, being stuck in the maze of the briar patch. Sometimes I can almost visualize myself down, crawling on the dry, dusty dirt with the briars above me and the thorns kind of poking down, and sometimes I have to crawl over and sometimes I have to crawl underneath. I think it's important to visualize your depression or your anxiety. That's kind of what I want to talk about today. So Briar Patch is the one that has resonated with me for a long time, and that's why I call it Secrets of the Briar Patch. So for all of you who have seen The Princess Bride, the sweet girl named Buttercup falls in love with Wesley. And Wesley goes off and becomes the dread pirate Roberts. And they're separated for a time, and then they come together and find each other. And they are on their way through the fire swamp. And they leave the fire swamp, they're just getting out of it. They've been stuck in it, I imagine, for a couple days or a while. And the six-fingered man says, "Surrender!" And the dread pirate Roberts, or Wesley, says, we know the secrets of the fire swamp. We could stay in there for a couple days. As much as we would not want to stay in the briar patch of depression and build a summer home there, because I feel like I've kind of become a little bit of an expert on my own depression, feel like I've figured out some of the secrets of my own briar patch. And that's where the name Secrets of the Briar Patch has come from. So on this blog, I want to share some of the things that I have learned in my journey through depression and share with you some of the secrets that I have found to navigating your way through the briar patch. One of the secrets that I've learned in my time in the briar patch, I like to call it what it is. So to me, call it what it is to acknowledge when you know you're having depression and anxiety, or one or the other. So to call it what it is to acknowledge to yourself, I'm depressed, I'm having depression. If you have an analogy that really resonates with you, whether it's the briar patch or the storm or being out on the sea or that rain cloud that follows you along or being in the roller coaster, whatever resonates with you, that's what I want you to call it. Now here's an idea. So you could come up with a name, and I have an analogy. I call him General Sherman. And my husband thinks it's kind of ridiculous and silly, and it is, but that's okay. It makes sense to my brain. Everybody has depression in a different way. It's gonna make sense to everybody in their own unique way. So General Sherman, to me, when I think about having depression, I think about the pressure on myself almost feels like a sergeant or a general in the Marines or the Army or something like that is yelling commands at me and expecting things of me, and things are hard and I just am barely hanging on. So I named him General Sherman. When I picture General Sherman, I picture a short, squat man who turns red in the face when he yells out his commands, spit flies, he's angry, he's just a grumpy man. I picture him with a mustache and old shoes that he still shines, with his uniform on, and he's probably bald under the cap that he always wears. To me, that's General Sherman. I just picture him as this guy who demands so much of me. That to me is a small explanation of how I feel sometimes when I'm depressed, that he's just looming over me, getting in my face and demanding things of me that I do not feel capable of. Okay, so what I want when I say call it what it is I want those of you who have depression or suggest this to somebody is say, let's call it what it is. You come up with a name, whatever it is. If it's General Sherman, if it's the monster, if it's the storm. But it almost is more effective if you can write down a list of what traits your depression has. Or for kids, this is especially effective. And this is really good with anxiety too, by the way. But with kids, this is especially effective to draw a picture. So if it's a hairy monster with green hair and yellow polka dots and 2 horns and fangs, maybe it drools and 3 arms, whatever it is, draw a picture of it, write it out, and call it what it is. And not only acknowledge it to yourself, but if you can get a little bit of a lingo with some of your loved ones and say, just so you know, my monster's in town, or General Sherman is in town, and I just want you to know that I'm dealing with that right now. That way, you and your loved ones can be aware of each other. It sounds so silly, but it can be very effective, especially when I'm having anxiety. So if I am just feeling frazzled and stressed out, I would have an inner dialogue that would go something like, General Sherman, you know what? I have some things that I need to accomplish, and you're actually making things more difficult. I don't want to be ornery, and I am going to focus on this one thing right now. But for now, I want you to calmly sit in the corner and stay here. And don't bother me, because I have some things that I need to get done, and I am going to calmly take care of them. You'll be shocked. It sounds ridiculous. I can't say that enough. It really does sound so silly. But to acknowledge to yourself that that is a part of you that you're going to put to the side. So visualizing it, calling it what it is, acknowledging it can be very effective. And here is why. For a long time, when I had depression, and I think so many of us do this, we begin to hate a part of ourselves. When I've just chewed out my kids for things that they probably didn't need to be reprimanded for, and I snapped at my husband, I get down on myself and I feel really guilty. And it becomes this vicious cycle where I'm depressed because I was mean to everybody around me. And then I have guilt, and I feel really horrible, and it makes me more depressed, and then it makes me more grumpy, and then I snap at people again, and it just continues to go on. But if I can acknowledge to myself that, guess what? I am not my depression. My depression is something else. It is General Sherman. It separates me from my depression. I am fighting on a regular basis against my depression, but it's not me. I shouldn't continue to loathe the pieces of me that cause me to be ornery. I should loathe my depression. I should fight against my storm cloud, my roller coaster, whatever it is that I've acknowledged it and visualized it to be. Once you've done that and you really defined what your villain looks like, now what I want you to do is I want you to define who you are. I, Melissa, am happy-go-lucky. I'm silly, and I love to be immature. I love to embarrass myself and embarrass my husband and my kids. I love to dance around the kitchen and just be weird. I love to be with animals. You get the idea, etc., 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 right? I now that I have a list of what General Sherman looks and acts like and all of his characteristics and how he makes me feel, now that I've defined all of that on another piece of paper, I've also defined who I am. Who I am when General Sherman is not in town. The person that I know that I am capable of being when I don't suffer with depression. That is the person that I want to concentrate on. And when I find myself having guilt and that vicious cycle is starting, that I can define it and separate it and say, you know what? This is the person that Melissa is. And this is what depression does to me and how it makes me feel. But guess what? They're separate. They're not together. It does wonders to your brain when you separate them and acknowledge the fact that it's not you. You are not fighting against you. You don't hate yourself. It's the depression. And once you can learn to define that to yourself in your head, you can start communicating with your family in that way. And they can be a little bit more understanding because they will realize that's what you're dealing with for the moment. There are times, I will say, that it's more effective with anxiety, but it still is effective to say to my husband, guess what, this is what I'm dealing with right now. And then he understands. Let me know if you think it's effective. Tell me if you think it's crazy. I really would love feedback. Share this. This is one of my secrets of the Briar Patch, but this isn't a secret that I want you to keep. It's a secret that I want you to share. Thank you so much.